حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of the book Ta'aleem wa Tarbiyat al-Islam, or Training and Education in Islam, by the Hitayatullah Mutahhari rahmatullah alayh. As you remember, we started discussing different theories about what makes an action moral or ethical. We already mentioned some theories, and Ayatollah Mutahhari sometimes, goes again back and forth to compare them, to explain their differences. A theory that we discussed and we want to again expand on is the theory of Kant, German philosopher. As you remember, he had the idea that an action is moral if it is done only out of moral sense of responsibility, as a moral obligation, without considering outcomes for yourself or for others. For example, shopkeeper, you should sell products with fair price, with good services, with politeness, not because you want to attract more, customers, or you want to compete with other shopkeepers. No, without any such considerations. Just because this is right, you should do it. For Kant, the intention is important. For some theories, intention is not important because they just look at the action and the outcomes of the action. But for Kant, intention is very important, like Islamic view, where we focus on intention as a major factor. But in addition to intention, we also are concerned about the action. And also we need to explain how these moral obligations come. What is the foundation? What is the reason for such moral obligations? Otherwise, sometimes people may disagree on what is moral responsibility, especially when there are conflicts. In any case, we already mentioned this much about theory of Kant. And he says a question can be discussed about theory of Kant is that, is it possible at all that we do something without considering any benefit for ourselves or not? Some people say it's impossible. Why? Because they say that everything that we do, we only do it when we find it to be good for us, when it somehow helps us with moving towards perfection of one aspect in us, at least. Some people, maybe they think their perfection is in having more money, more fame. Some people may think their perfection is, in having healthy body. Some people may think perfection is having, peaceful mind. Different things. But unless you find something is good for you, you don't do it. Even those people who do bad things, for example, if they take a food which is not healthy, for example, but they do it because it gives them some pleasure. Or those who take, for example, some drugs, they know it's harmful for them overall, but they say it gives me some instant satisfaction. So they think it's giving them something good. I'm not saying it is a right calculation, but I'm saying they don't do something which is 100%, in their opinion, useless. No, they think it's beneficial, but unfortunately they underestimate other factors and other areas that they are harmed. So every person does something after they think it's good for them. So to say that you should do something which is only for moral obligation, out of moral sense of responsibility, without any consideration about yourself, some people say it's not possible. Then Ayatollah Mutahari here says something in response to this opinion. He says there is a mughalata, there is a fallacy. Mughalata means fallacy. There is a fallacy here. This is not proving or, to agree 100% with Kant, but it's to refute this objection. So he says, if someone says that we only do things when we get some kind of pleasure from them, and then uses this as a ground to say that therefore we only do things which are good for us, he says this is a fallacy. Why? Because in human beings, there are desires to do good to ourselves and there are desires to do good to others. And when we do good to ourselves, we get pleasure. And when we do good to others, also we get pleasure. So it's not that we only have to do good to ourselves, because without getting pleasure, without having a desire that we want to satisfy, we are not going to do anything. We say we have all kinds of desires. In my humble view, I have explained that not only we have desire for helping others and helping ourselves, we have also desire for absolute beauty. We have desire for absolute knowledge. We have desire for love. And therefore, if something can help us in moving closer to absolute beauty or absolute knowledge, even if it is not helping me or others, I would love to do so. This is, inshallah, to be discussed in another place. In any case, we have such desires which are altruistic in nature, and we get pleasure. So that's not an issue. And even if we agreed philosophically that in the end, any agent does what they find to be good for them, or to be leading to their perfection, can be compatible with doing altruistic things because we find them desirable in us and they give us also some pleasure. Ayatollah Mutahari says, انسان موجودی است که از نفع رساندن به غیر هم لذت میبرد. Human being is a being that by benefiting others also gets pleasure. It's not that just by benefiting himself gets pleasure. و میتواند به مقامی برسد که از نفع رساندن به غیر بیش از آن لذت ببرد که از نفع رساندن به خود. Even a human being can reach the point that not only gets pleasure from benefiting others, he can get more pleasure when he benefits others compared to when he benefits himself. Or he can get more pleasure when he prevents harm reaching others than preventing harm reaching himself. For example, you experience this with your children. You know, sometimes if there's a food, there's a fruit that you like, but you give it to your child, or you give it to your parent, or to your spouse, and when they eat, you get more pleasure than just eating yourself. Or those who are kind and generous and charitable, there was something that they could, buy for themselves, but they give the money and they buy something for a poor person. Then when they see that poor person is happy, that poor person can, take something for his family, the pleasure that they get from this is much more than pleasure that they get when they spend it on themselves. Actually, they may not get that much pleasure in spending on themselves, but they get lots of pleasure in benefiting others. This is possible in human beings. He says, Maddiyun, those who have materialistic outlook, they say human beings, whatever they do is for their own benefit only. He says, no, human beings can reach the point that they want to benefit others. Then he says, going back to Kant, when he says that human action, in order to be moral or ethical, should not be conditional upon benefits, good outcomes, etc. So if he means that it should not be conditional upon my benefits, upon good outcomes for me, yes, we agree, it shouldn't be conditional. But if he wants to say even should not be beneficial for others or should not be conditional about benefiting others, he says, we don't accept this. But we can, inshallah, again, continue this discussion about Kant in future. And the main thing is to ask Kant, where does this moral sense of obligation come from? He refers it to conscience, to wajdan akhlaqi, and we will talk about this. In Islamic moral philosophy, the good thing is that at the same time that we pay attention to human feelings and desires and conscience, but we try to build everything upon clear, rational premises. Otherwise, wajdan of people, can be sometimes, unfortunately, not clear, or sometimes maybe misguided. You cannot just say, do what you think is good, what you have good feeling about it, because sometimes people can reach the point that they do bad things and they feel happy. Sometimes people reach the point that they enjoy annoying others, unfortunately. If we were all remaining in that God-given condition of fitrah, our wajdan was good compass. But the problem is that because we go away from fitrah sometimes, our wajdan cannot be always clear, and sometimes wajdan can function in a distorted way. We will talk about it more, inshallah. So this lesson finishes. It was a remaining part of previous lesson. Then we go to the next lesson or lecture by Ayatollah Mutahari. And at the beginning, he has a quick review. He says our discussion was about what is the basis, what is the criterion for a moral action, in contrast to natural action. Natural actions or fi'l tabi'i is what we do in sharing with animals. Eating, drinking, etc. These are not moral actions by themselves. Yes, we can do them for the sake of some moral reasons, then they become also moral. But just eating, drinking, etc., these are breathing, these are tabi'i. What is human? That's our focus, means exclusive to human beings. We want to know what makes them ethical. So, two questions are here. What is mi'yar, the criterion? Second, what's the sanction? Why I should do this? Yeah, this is also a very important question. How do you define a moral action? What is the criterion to make something moral? Number two, what motivates us to do what is moral? Why I should do it? Why I cannot ignore it? So every theory has to answer these two questions. After referring to what we discussed already before about egoism and altruism, etc., he goes to Darwinism. Charles Darwin, as you know himself, was a religious person. He was not an atheist, he was a religious person. But the theory of evolution later was found by some people as a good basis and vehicle to attack religion, to attack faith, because they thought creationism is the basis of religious understanding of the world, in contrast to theory of evolution. And therefore they wanted to use this against religion. But Darwin himself was a religious person, and for him morality was also important. But there is a problem in the system that he proposed. Maybe he couldn't foresee consequences and how this can be misused. In any case, for him, what is very important is that every living being is trying to struggle for survival. And this struggle for survival is based on natural selection and has no altruistic consideration. For him, the main thing is tanazu', not ta'awun. Tanazu' means conflict. There is conflict because resources are not enough. And some living beings want to, for example, destroy others, either as food, to use them as food, or to create more space for themselves, or get this water, etc., get the light, whatever. There is tanazu' baqa. There is conflict for survival. Ta'awun, collaboration and cooperation, seems that only can be a way for winning the conflict. Ayatollah Mutahari says, in this theory, there seems to be no place for ta'awun unless you collaborate against others. It's not that helping others by itself is good. You are concerned about your survival, and then when you see there is a great challenge, you say, okay, let me unite with those who have similar challenge like mine so that together we defeat them. In this way, ta'awun is also egoistic. unlike the way we look at ta'awun. We think helping others as such is good. I don't help others against enemies only, or I don't help others in order to benefit from them. I help others because even if it's not beneficial for me, I love to help others. I love to reduce or eliminate pain and suffering of others. Even I don't want animals or plants to, suffer. We have different view about collaboration, but based on parameters that theory of evolution make available, collaboration, cooperation seem to be only possible for the sake of winning in conflicts and surviving. Therefore, he says, although many people tried to find a way to maintain ethics within theory of evolution, but he said it's not working. There is no such option available. Then he goes to, again, the discussion about moral conscience, وجدان أخلاقي, which is the theory of like people like Kant that say, we have taklif, we have moral obligation, and we should do things out of moral obligation. So he says, if we ask them, where does this obligation lie? Where does it stand? They say in Vejdan. He says for them, Vejdan is like a God somehow. Of course, Kant himself believed in God and believed in Vejdan, but some people may not believe in God. They say Vejdan. Anyway, the ultimate authority seems to be Vejdan. For example, Kant says God has put this Vejdan in us. Some people may say, we have this Vejdan. Anyway, they don't go beyond. They don't investigate further. When they reach Vejdan, moral conscience, that's it. And they say, God has created us with this moral conscience, and this is different from emotions or feelings or desires for helping others. Do things just because in your conscience you know that you must do it, regardless of egoistic or altruistic considerations. Ayatollah Mutahari says about Kant, او درباره اطاعت از وجدان همان حرف را میزند که اهل ایمان در مسئله اخلاص نسبت به باری تعالی میزنند. He says Kant about following Vejdan says the same thing that mu'minin believers talk about. Of course, he was also a believer, but believers in a normal way. What they say about the need for ikhlas, for sincerity. You only do things for the sake of Allah, sincerely. Mukhlaseen Allahuddin. He says do things sincerely for the sake of Vajdan, for the sake of Vajdan akhlaqi, your moral conscience. Ayatollah Mutahari says, we are happy with Vajdan. We don't deny Vajdan akhlaqi. We don't deny moral conscience. Actually, Quran teaches us that Allah has put in us ability to discern between what is right, what is wrong. وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. We have this in Islam. Surah Shams, verse 8. Or we have in Islam the concept of nafs al-lawwameh. The blaming soul is the one that, based on moral conscience, when we do something wrong or we fail to do something right, blames us. We have this, we have hadith about this. Ayatollah Mutahari in some other books have mentioned. For example, someone went to ask Rasulullah about the meaning of birr, goodness and piety. And Rasulullah said, refer to your heart. if something is good, gives you peace. If something is bad, when you think about it, makes you shake and feel uncomfortable. We have all these things, but the issue is that we say, with my wording, we say that Vejdan is not a hujjah. Vejdan is not a proof. Why? Because as we said, Vejdan can change. For us, hujjah is aql and prophets and imams. Our heart, our Vejdan can be changed, can be affected by other things, by our lifestyle. Therefore, we never say, just refer to your heart. To begin with, when we are in the condition of fitra, yes, but not always. Therefore, we are not against Vejdan, but we don't say everyone can refer to himself or herself and say, okay, I understand that this is what I have to do. I referred to my heart and found this. No. Plus, there are lots of details. Vejdan is, even for the people who are in good condition, for general principles. When you go to details, to derivative issues, or when there are conflicts, you have to prioritize. Vejdan is not adequate. We need more guidance. He has a beautiful point here also, and I'd like everyone to listen very carefully. Very nice point. And we all have experienced this and keep experiencing this. He says, imagine you want to, for example, look after your health and diet, or for other reasons, maybe you want to save money and help others, etc. You have the choice of buying, for example, something very delicious, some chocolate and cakes, etc., or delicious food, and you can also not to buy it. Buying it gives you some pleasure. You are going to enjoy it. It gives you some satisfaction. Not buying it is good for your health, or is good for saving money and spending on other causes. You feel inside you there are two voices, both inside you. One says buy and enjoy. Another say don't buy and enjoy something else. Or for example, you want to continue sleeping, or to wake up for tahajjud, for ibadah, for salatul layl. Two voices inside you. One says enjoy your sleeping, it's nice, your warm bed, remain there, and it's especially when it's cold, winter. The other one says, wake up, make wudu, enjoy ibadah, salatul layl, etc. Two voices are inside you. When you listen to the voice which says, enjoy eating this food, or enjoy your sleep, you feel some pleasure, but inside you feel bad. Why I couldn't stand for my higher choices? When you sleep, later you regret why I didn't get up. So this shows that there are two aspects inside us. Other external voices are there, but They cannot do anything unless there's a translation, there's an interpreter inside us, or there is a magnifier inside us for them. Everything should go back inside at the end. And then it's me choosing between these things inside. When I listen to the one which says, go for higher choices, I feel happier. Not only at that time maybe it's difficult, but in the long term, I am next day, next week, next year, always happy that I didn't sleep at that time. Or I didn't eat that food which was not healthy, or which was not, letting me to save some money for poor, etc. When I go for the lower choice, at that time I feel happy. But later I regret. Next day, next week, next month, next year, always I regret. Why I was not strong enough to go for the other choice. This shows that although there are two kinds of me, but my real me is my higher me, not my lower me. In other words, the human soul is like a building which has different floors. The lower floor is for animal desires and needs. Imagine you have for example, a school or a house for a scholar. In the basement, you have toilet, bathroom, and also, place for cooking, etc. It's a very important basic needs. Can we have a house without toilet? Can we have a house without bathroom? We need to take shower. Can we have a house without kitchen? No. You need all these things, utility room, all these things. It's a basement. But these are not what make a scholar or people who want to have a school satisfied. The main thing is the higher floor, where there's a library, where there's a study room, there are desks for writing, for research, for mubah discussion, lecturing. That's the main thing. Human nafs is also the same. There are lower desires, and there is lower me, and there is higher me and higher desires. So, when you talk about Vijdan, you have to clarify what you mean by Vijdan, by moral conscience, and what type of people's Vijdan we are talking about, etc. So we are not against Vijdan, but just we have to clarify all these things. And as I said, it's not Hujjah. Then he refers to the theory of many materialists like Bertrand Russell, who argue that ethics is only a way of calculating our interests, and it's based on contracts. For example, I know that if I steal, for example, there are two village men, each of them has some animals, some cows. So this neighbor says, if I steal the cows of my neighbor, he will do the same with me. So I should not steal his cow. The other person thinks the same way. Or if I, for example, make noise in the night, they will make noise, I cannot sleep, so I should not make it. So it's like a kind of contract, it's mutual, acceptance of things based on not harming so that you would not be harmed. On the roads and motorways, we should observe the laws and regulations of traffic so that other people don't also violate these rules, and then they will hit my car, we will have accident, or we will have blockage, etc. I should not tell lies to people because I don't want them to tell me lies. So it's based on contract. Ayatollah Mutahhari says that the problem with this theory is that there is no sacredness in akhlaq. Plus, this can only work to some extent. It's not enough for all aspects of akhlaq. This is only for social, ethics. For personal ethics, this doesn't work. Even for social ethics, this doesn't work when both parties have no equal power, because contract needs negotiation. What is going to make a person or a party who is more powerful, what is going to stop them dictating their terms to the other party? He says, if there are two superpowers, he uses the term of, it says, Nixon and Brezhnev in the time of Soviet Union. Brezhnev was the president of Soviet Union. Nixon was president of the US. He says these two are two superpowers leaders, and when they negotiate, they can negotiate well with each other because each of them is able to resist the terms which are fixed by other. They have enough of means to resist. But if, for example, a superpower is negotiating with a poor country, which doesn't have money, doesn't have media, doesn't have an army like them, what is going to make the one who has upper hand moral? Why he should bother about what the lower one thinks about this? If you are basing morality only on contracts and negotiation, then it's not going to work when there is no equal power for both parties. We must find a sanction for morality. We must find a kind of sacred foundation for morality, something that everyone should blame himself or herself if they fail to observe. Not that just like business, that if someone has no other sense of responsibility, just tries to do business as suits his business without any other consequence. So if he has ability to defeat all the people in the market, make them bankrupt, make them suffer, he feels he has been successful businessman. When business is free from and void from akhlaq, then they say, oh, this is very good businessman. Over a few years, he managed to make all other competitors, bankrupt. Or, for example, he managed to force all the suppliers to reduce the cost, and doesn't think that those suppliers themselves are suffering. They are not able to meet their expenses, but they have no other choice. So akhlaq should not be reduced to a kind of business void from values, human values. Inshallah, we continue this discussion bi'idhnillah in the next session. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the soul of Ayatollah Mutahhari and his teacher, or one of his teachers, the late Imam Khomeini, whose anniversary was yesterday. May Allah inshallah bless the souls of all our ulama, our teachers and parents and foreparents, and enable us to live our life with morality and spirituality. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
If there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hands. Yes, please unmute yourself. Ruzvi, please unmute. Okay, Aga, it looks like there are no more questions, and anyone raise hand. They are not unmuted.
التماس ده.
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام.